Okay, so let's pick up and finish off our B-roll project. I've got these shortcuts popping up here in the top corner of my screen. So if you are struggling with which shortcuts I'm using, you should see them there. So I can zoom in and out with minus and then plus, although it shows as equals right here because it's the same button. And I'm going to hit Shift minus to shrink these down. I'll hit the backslash key to zoom in just a little bit. So let's make this screen just a little bit bigger. And again, if you're seeing anything different on your screen, go to the window menu, workspaces, make sure you're on editing, and then reset to the saved layout. And that should give you a layout that looks similar to mine. So far in the project, we have gone through and we have added our A roll here on the bottom layer on video 1. And that A roll had the university shots.
Rock the vote at Belmont University, where
that then transitioned every time they were talking about a new university.
Nashville colleges are with performance from.
So we can see these edits are happening right there in the middle points. Then we went through and we added the transparent logos to the lower left corner. We did that by putting the logos in and making sure that they were the same length as our A roll so that they would show up over the university shots. And then we selected them and we opened up our window effect controls, which is Shift 5. And once we had those in place, we simply selected the word position or scale. We scaled the size of it down. And once you click on the word position or scale, then we can actually just drag it around just like in Photoshop that will have these little resizing windows. So we did that for the Tennessee State logo. MTSU already had their logo burned in, but we added that for the Fisk logo and for the Vanderbilt logo and for the Belmont logo again. Then we went through and we added the logos for the sponsors as they were mentioned. So here on video layer 3, we added the Rock the Vote logo. And then we added our artists. So we went through and right before they mention an artist, right after they're done talking about a university, then we show that here.
State University, spoken word artist.
So right after they mention the university, we bring up the photos of the artist that they mention.
Spoken word artist, Summer Jade.
And of course, we selected them, did the same thing, adjusted our scale until we could get it all on the screen and click the word positioner scale so that we got our little handles here around it and we can move those around on the screen. Now, one thing I like is as I drag this around, you'll notice these red lines showing up, which help us center it and put it in the right place. And we can do that by under the view menu. We want to have Snap in Program Monitor turned on. Now that'll only be turned on if you have this window selected with the blue outline around it. But with that selected, you can say View Snap. And you'll notice that now as we move this around, select it, click on Position or Scale, then you'll see that'll snap it in the right place. And finally, the last thing we did in class was we opened up our window Essential Graphics panel. And our Essential Graphics panel might open up here on the side, or it might open up over here on your right side. By the way, any of these windows can be moved anywhere on the screen. If you just go to it when you see it highlighted, click on the little drop-down box and choose Undock Panel. Now that one is floating around, but we can actually put it anywhere on our screen that we like by just clicking on the name and dragging it and putting it all the way over here on the right side of the screen where you see this little highlight bar pop up. And when we let go, that would put it right there. So we can resize any of these by hovering our mouse between and adjusting them. So if yours, wherever your window opens up, we just want to be able to see it. We initially went to the Browse tab, and I just had you guys search for a basic title. So I searched for the word basic and found the basic title, and then we dragged that in. We then came into that title and we selected it. And then in our Essential Graphics, we can go to the Edit tab. That's this little edit button right here where we can type in the name. Just like in Photoshop, we have our layers. So I could double click this and I typed in Summer Jade. And we can hide or show those by clicking on the eyeball, just like in Photoshop. And when we select the text, we could actually come in and change our font. So for example, I changed it to a bold font and we can adjust the size. And once that is in place, we can actually also just select our clip and choose our main selection tool or the V key, and that will let us move that around to wherever we like. So we already have done that here for Summer Jade, putting that in. So I'll just delete this other one. And then in order to make copies for the other artists, once we had one that looked the way we liked, we can just select that, hold our Option key down, and with our Option key held down, we actually could just click and drag. And with the Option key held down, you see that made a copy of it. So then we can just put that in place. And now it already has the same font in the same location. And so to edit that for this artist, which is
Shelter Cove.
Shelter Cove, we simply select that, come to our Essential Graphics, double click on the layer, and type in the name of the new artist. So that's way faster than having to go and create a new title and dragging it in every time by holding the Option key down and just dragging. Hold the Option key, drag, and then let go of the mouse first with the Option key still held down, and that made a copy. So that brings us to the next point in the process. So let's Command Tab over to our instructions and go from there. So we've applied text titles for each artist, but when we looked at the original video or the sample video, we also want to blur the background out. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to tap my tilde key. That's on the upper left part of your keyboard directly under the Escape key. And tilde will blow this up nice and big so that we can easily see and add more tracks as needed. And I'll hit my backslash key to zoom out, but we could do the same thing with the plus and minus to zoom in and out. So let's see what we need to do next. It says to use an adjustment layer and a Gaussian blur to blur out the video and logos under each artist and graphic. So we want to blur these layers, the logo and the university, every time these artists come up on screen. So in order to do that, we need to actually put that adjustment layer, just like in Photoshop, over these layers so that it affects everything underneath. So to do that, we'll select all of these clips. So I'm just going to click and drag over those clips, hold my Option key down, and hit the up arrow. So Option and the up arrow key will move those up to a higher track. And that's going to let us put an adjustment layer right here that will affect everything beneath it, just like we learned in Photoshop. So now to make an adjustment layer, I need to go to my project window. So Shift-1 will take me to our project window. And if I don't see it, I can just click here in my area until I see the project window, or under the window menu, we can go to projects and choose the project. So that brings us here, and now we need to make a new adjustment layer. So we can do that two ways. We can just go to the File menu, New, and choose Adjustment Layer. But we do have to have this window selected first. But just like in Photoshop, that's now going to create an adjustment layer that's the same size, width, and height as our main video. So I'll hit OK, and there it's created in our timeline. I'm going to double click on the name and choose to rename it and add the word blur, blur adjustment layer. And that's going to mean we can add a blur effect to this. And just like in Photoshop, that will now blur everything that appears below the adjustment layer. So I'm going to grab this and I'll just drag and drop it in here into our timeline. And you'll see that right now, because there's no effect applied to this blur adjustment layer, it's not affecting anything beneath it. Let's add a blur. So I'll go to my window menu and open up my effects, or Shift-7. And that opens up this effects window. As we can see right here, it's underlined and highlighted. And I'm just going to click in here and type blur. And when I search for a blur effect, I see a bunch of different ones come up. But just like we did in class with Photoshop, there's our Gaussian blur. And I can select that. And if I have my blur adjustment clip selected, I can just double click it, and that will add it on. Make sure my adjustment layer clip is selected, double click on Gaussian blur, and you'll see this little effects tab opens up, and we see the Gaussian blur added to its effect controls. Let's just take this blur adjustment layer, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the blurriness and just drag it to the right a little bit. And we can see that now everything beneath that adjustment layer, the logo and the university, are all now being blurred out. So I can just trim this until it is exactly the same length as the video. And so when we hit play,
Welcome.
that blurs everything out underneath the Rock the Vote logo, because it is above the transparent logo for Belmont and the drone shot. So now the same as our others, our titles, we can actually just copy this clip. Instead of making more adjustment layers over and adding blur to them, we can hold our Option key down and then click and drag on this clip, keep the Option key held down and let go of the clip with our mouse, and you see that made a copy. So now that also has the blur applied to the Tennessee State logo and their drone. So I'm going to trim this until it snaps to the same edges. Now, when you're trimming, you should see it snap right up against that edge. And if not, make sure you come over to this little magnet, and you'll see that it says Snap in Timeline. If that is turned off, when you click and drag, you'll notice it doesn't necessarily stop at the edges of the other clips. So you'll see it just lets you drag it anywhere. But if we turn that on, it makes it much easier to make sure these clips last the same amount of time, because as we drag things, it'll snap to the edges of other clips. So let's hold our Option key down And I'm just going to put one of these blur adjustment layers under every single one of our artists so that now as they appear on screen, their logo, their text, and their picture is above our adjustment layer. And so those are the only things that are not blurred by the adjustment layer beneath. So let's hold our Option key down and drag, and we will just add a blur adjustment layer to each of these pieces. Feel free to pause the video and turn around and go do that, or come back here and refer to any of the video if you need it. But that has created now a blur underneath each of those artists. And of course, I would need to go through still and add a few other artists there, Moon Taxi and the Bryn Joy. That gets our blur in place, and it looks okay, but we still have a few things we need to improve here. And that is that our blur adjustment layer just appears on the screen.
Welcome to Rock the Vote.
You see it just pops up out of nowhere. So what we want is for that to actually fade in, for all of these clips to fade into place rather than simply
Welcome to Rock.
Pop up on the screen. So we can do that two ways. I'm going to show you the two ways to do it. First, let's select the adjustment layer, and I'll show you how to do it without an effect. So if we click on this wrench menu right here in the upper left corner, you're going to see Show Video Keyframes, and we want to make sure that is turned on. So make sure that checkbox is checked. And what that does is create this little white line here, and on an audio track, that white line can control the volume, but on video tracks, it controls the transparency or the opacity. For example, if I hover over this line on the Rock the Vote logo, and I see this little up and down arrow on my mouse, if I drag that down, that now it becomes more transparent. So if I pulled it all the way down, you see it's mostly transparent. If I pull it all the way down, then it's completely invisible. So that's what that line does, is these video keyframes will make a clip more or less transparent, more or less see-through. But what we can do, I'm going to zoom in here. And again, if your clips are not tall enough, you can either hover between the clip tracks and hover on this line, and you can drag them up taller, or Shift plus and Shift minus will toggle between tall and short tracks. So now what we want to do is have this go from completely transparent. So this blur layer, you notice if we made that completely transparent, all of the blur goes away because now the adjustment layer is transparent. Its opacity is 0. So let's set that all the way up to 100%. And what we're going to do is add a keyframe. So hold our thumb on the Command key, and when we press down, you'll notice when we hover over that line, we get this little arrow with a plus. And if I click, then we see this little frame, this little dot added, and I'll hold my Command key down again and go a little earlier in the clip and add another point. So by holding my Command key down and clicking on that line, that now created these little points. Now let go of all modifier keys, no Command, no Option, and now we can simply click on this first keyframe and drag it down and over to the left. And what that's going to do is now this adjustment layer is going to start fully transparent. So you see there's no blur visible, but as it becomes more opaque or not see-through, then that blur fades up. Let's see how that looks.
To Rock the Vote app.
And so the blur now you see fades up over the course of that line. Now we could do the same thing for our Rock the Vote logo. So if we want it to fade up, I'll hold my Command key down and click to add 2 points. So I hold my Command key and I click, then I let go of my Command key and I can pull this transparency line down, this keyframe. So you see that both the logo and the adjustment layer will fade up. So if I just move to the right one frame at a time, you see now that they're fading up at the same time together, which lets them smoothly come onto the screen.
Welcome to Rock the Vote.
And that's beautiful. Now we'll only do that here to the beginning of these clips, so that fades that up. But I want the clips to still end at the same time as the changes are happening here on screen. And I can tell already by looking at this that this adjustment layer and the Rock the Vote logo actually go a little bit farther than the Belmont drone shots. Let's see what that looks like. So you see how that all disappeared at different times? The background changed because it switched to this drone shot, but then the blur and the adjustment layer were still on screen, and that doesn't look very good. So what I want to do is trim those so that they end at the exact same time. So I just hover over the edge and trim those back. And because I have my magnet snap turned on, that now they all end at the exact same time. And so you see as they go, right as the next drone shot starts, it's now switched those off. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and let's go add those same transitions to our other effects. So I'll zoom in a little bit here, hold my Command key down, and I'll click to add, hold the Command key down and click to add some transition points, some keyframes, and just let go of the Command key and pull that one down. And so I'm just holding the Command key to put in the points, then I let go of the Command key, and now all of these, her text, her picture, and the blur adjustment layer will fade up. And that looks great.
Spoken word artist Summer Jade from Middle.
And you notice that these are also ending all at the exact same time as it transitions from Tennessee State and the artist for Tennessee State. It immediately switches all of them at the same time. What you do want to do to make sure that things look good is you don't want these to accidentally be different lengths. So if you zoom in close with your plus key, you'll see if they're accidentally different lengths. And let's look at what that looks like if they do start and end at different times. So here, as they say Summer Jade, I see the background change, but her picture is still up and so is the blur. And then the logo disappears, and that's a little awkward. But then her picture disappears, but the blur is still there. And finally, the blur disappears. Here's what that looks like if it plays back in real time.
Jade from Middle.
That doesn't look very good. So we want to make sure that our logos for the university shots end at exactly the same frame. And our adjustment layer ends at exactly the same frame, as well as the artist and their title. Great. So now you can go through and just do that. I'll hold my Command key down and add some points and drag that first one down. And I'm just doing this here at the very beginning of them, making a very short little fade. And you can go through and do the same.
Shelter code.
And that'll let them fade up nice and gently. Going to make sure that each artist ends at the same time as their university shot. So that there's no transition where some of the old pictures are still on screen. And now go through and everybody just add your keyframes and let's put these points in. And this will let us quickly adjust our transitions so that these things all fade up.
R&B singer-songwriter.
Looks great. So go through and do that to the rest of your clips. And we want to do that to all of our artists and all of their pictures and all of their titles. So I'm just holding my Command key down and again, adding those keyframes. So you should be able to go through and do that to all of your artists.
A cappella group.
And that looks great. Now there is one thing that happens with this clip. I chose this Vanderbilt clip and we see that it looks like it's zoomed in. In fact, if we double click it to open it up, it looks like it's really zoomed in because we can't actually see it. That's because this clip is actually far bigger than all of our other clips. All of our other clips were only 1280 pixels by 720, but this clip, it says it's 4K. And that means that it's way bigger. So it's literally like this big on the screen. So what we want to do is right click on that, and we're going to choose Set to Frame Size. I'm going to choose Set to Frame Size by right clicking on it. That has now adjusted the scale of this clip. If I select it, you see that scaled it down to 33.3% so that it would fit. So if I have it at the wrong size, whether it's way too big or way too small, if I right click on it and choose Set to Frame Size, not Scale to Frame Size, we'll talk about why not in class, choose Set to Frame Size, that just changed the scale and now it fits perfectly.
From Vanderbilt University.
All right.
Clinton. From Vanderbilt.
Now that looks a little weird right here on this clip because I see the Fisk drone shot in the background actually cuts to a different, or actually it looks like even the Vanderbilt logo. The Vanderbilt shot starts with a different shot of Vanderbilt. So let's learn one more little tool that we can use to adjust our shots if we have any weird extra frames like this, where this video clip starts with the wrong thing. So we could fix that a couple ways. We could come to where the current clip starts. We could hold our trim tool, hover over the edge and trim that off. And then we could move that back to the beginning so that now this clip starts with this shot. And then we could trim the end out. And now that's all in the right place. The other thing we could do, I'm going to undo that, is actually we can use what we call the slip tool. So since this clip, essentially, if we were to look at it, it starts with a different shot, and then in one clip, it cuts to this next shot. So what I want to do is essentially move that over like we just did, but we can do that with this tool right here. If you hover over it, it says the slip tool, or you can access it with the Y key. So when I hit the Y key, that gives me the slip tool, and here's what we see. When you hover over this now, you can click and drag, and up here you see the first frame of the new clip and the last frame. So when I click right now and drag, you see the first frame still has that shot of a roof. But if I drag to the left, essentially, I'm doing exactly those same steps. I'm moving where the clip starts and where it ends. Even though the clip is starting and ending in the same place, the contents I'm now dragging so that the very first part when it comes in actually shows this bridge already. So as I click and drag to the left, I can see this is going to be my new first frame, and that's going to be my new second frame or last frame. So if I drag to the left until the bridge is already in place, now I didn't have to do all the trimming around, but I've
From Vanderbilt
immediately moved
University, a cappella group.
to having just the bridge shot. We want to go through our clips here in a second and make that same improvement. For example, if I zoom back here to the very beginning, I notice one thing that seems a little weird about this video is my music starts after my voice. So, and look at yours, and you might have chosen a piece of music where there's a big gap at the beginning. So if I hit play,
Group, the melody.
let me go back to the beginning.
Welcome to Rock.
I think I would like the music to actually start before her voice. So same thing with our slip tool. So I still have my slip tool selected. I can click and drag, and you see what it's doing. It's actually keeping the clip starting and ending at the same place, but it's letting me move the contents. So as I move them left and right, now you can see that music is going to start right at the beginning. Let's see how that sounds now.
Welcome to Rock.
So now the music is starting before the voice.
Welcome to Rock the Vote at Belmont University, where Nashville colleges are uniting to.
And all of our clips are working together now. So our music is starting on time. And if we see any of these other clips, for example, let's say maybe this one, it's got this beautiful drone shot where we're really far away from this building. But if I wanted to start where we were closer to the building, because right now it seems far away, again, I can use my slip tool and I'll just hover over our TSU drone shot. And now when I click and drag, you'll see that we can drag this until we start already a lot closer to the building right here, and then it'll end where we're really close to the building. So I'm just clicking with my slip tool and dragging to the left. And I think that's going to be a better shot starting with a closer view of this building. So let's see how that looks now.
Democracy. With performance from Tennessee State University, spoken word artist.
Nice, and that looks great. So I could do the same thing for
State
MTSU.
University, Shelter Cove.
So see, MTSU ends that shot there where it's on maybe a football stadium, and it looks a little awkward for it to change underneath our artist. So let's hold our slip key down, and I'll click and drag left and right until that shot is the same shot at the beginning and end. So this looks good. Maybe I'll start here with this football stadium. So you see how using the slip tool lets us take our clips that are already in and then drag them around so that we're viewing an earlier or later part of the clip.
Summer Jade. From Middle Tennessee State University, Shelter Cove. From Fisk University.
And all of that's looking really good. All right, so we used the roll or slip tools to adjust the contents of each clip. And then we want to make sure every edit point, the clips start and end at the same time to avoid flash frames like we looked at earlier. So if I switch back to my V key, I don't want these clips to end at different times. So if this was a little short and this was a little long, you'll see that this ends up looking pretty awkward when things disappear and change at different times.
Artist Summer Jade. From Middle Tennessee.
So we always want to go in and double check our drone shots, make sure that our magnet snap tool is turned on so we can trim these edit points so that they all end at the exact same time when that drone shot transitions, right before they start talking about the next university.
Summer Jade. From Middle Tennessee State University, Shelter.
Nice. So go through each of your edits. The easiest way to do that is just use your down arrow. And when I use my down arrow, up and down arrows will move us to the edges of clips on any track that has this blue box turned on. So I'm going to turn on that blue box for every one of my video tracks so that as I hit the down arrow, they should all jump to the end of that clip and they should all be at the same time. And then the down arrow again should take me on. Let me show you what that looks like if that's not the case. If you accidentally have some of these clips a little too long or a little too short and you're zoomed out, it can be really hard to see that they don't all end at the same time. You can see it if you watch it.
From
You saw all those things disappear at different times. But the easiest way to discover that is, I'll just make this a little taller so we can see everything. And I'll come here and move my audio down. is if I hit the down arrow, that it jumped to the edge of this clip and that they all start at the same time. If I hit the down arrow again, it jumps over to the end of this clip. And if I'm zoomed out too far, I can't really tell that they don't all end at the same time. But if I hit the down arrow again, it doesn't move very far, which tells me that it's stopping at the edge of a clip that's just a little bit farther. If I hit the down arrow again and it still doesn't move to this next part, I can tell, my clips are not ending at the same time. I hit down again and it still shows. So if I zoom in on those spots, I go, oh, I see. My clips are just not ending at the same time. So we want to zoom in and make sure that they all end together. And then that the artists and their logos and the adjustment layer blur in right before they're talked about.
R&B singer-songwriter Lauren.
Great. So that has got that. And we want to now create a composite shot of all 5 universities here during this intro. All right, let's go ahead and move on here to the last part to create a composite shot of all 5 universities. And then apply a dissolve in and fade out to the beginning and end of the video. So let's create this composite shot first. We'll scroll back over here to the beginning where they talk about the universities coming together.
Where Nashville colleges are uniting to celebrate democracy. With performers from Tennessee.
All right.
Nashville colleges are uniting to celebrate democracy.
So what we'll do is we're going to come in here and we want to have our universities all pop up on the screen. So I'm going to move my source patch up to this first empty track. So if it's not turned on, click it on there here for video 3. And let's open our project window. So Shift 1 will bring us back to our project window, or under our window, projects, and open our project window. And let's go back into wherever our drone footage is. And since we've already got Belmont here on screen, we're going to put up some images of the other universities. So I'm going to just load up a Fisk drone shot. And then again, make sure that my target, my source is patched right here to this third video track. And as she starts talking about the universities,
where Nashville,
I'm going to come in here and set my in point, and then I'll hit my down arrow, which will take me to the end of that clip. But remember, we have to hit the left arrow one time before we hit the O key for our out point, because that's going to make this clip end at exactly the right point. So if we had just hit the down arrow and then hit the out point, when we drop in our clip, it's going to go a little too long. So that's why we hit the down arrow to come to that next edit point, left arrow one time, and hit the out point. I to set our in point, down to jump to the next edit point, left to go back one frame, and O to set our out point. So it ends at exactly the same point. So now I've got my Fisk shot up here. I'm going to select this Fisk shot, and this one looks okay to put in. So let's just drop the whole thing in. I'll hit the period key, and that overwrites that Fisk drone shot right there.
Nashville colleges are uniting.
But we want to put all 4 of them on screen. So I'm going to click on my program monitor, make sure my view snap in program monitor is turned on. And now I'm just going to resize this so it just takes up one little corner of the screen. So I'll select the clip, open up my Effect Controls window. Under my window, Effect Controls, or Shift 5 is what I'll do. So Shift 5 brings that up. I'll click on Scale, and let's scale this down until we see how big something needs to be about 1/4 of the screen. Let's try 50%. And that looks like it might work. So I'll select this Fisk drone, click on the word Positioner Scale so I get my little handles, and I can just drag this to the upper left corner of the screen. So it looks like 50% scale should make this take up 1/4 of the screen. Great. So now let's add another university.
Where Nashville colleges are uniting to celebrate democracy.
So let's add in another one, but I want this one to come up just a little bit later. So I'll go, let's move our source patch up to the next track. So our video clip will go here. I'll load up an MTSU shot. This one should work fine. And I'm going to listen to these kick drums.
Nashville colleges.
And when I hear that next kick drum, I'll stop it.
Where Nashville colleges.
Bump. So where this next one comes up, I'll set my in point, down arrow to jump to the next edit point, left arrow one time to go one frame earlier, and O to set my out point. And that's going to end this clip at the exact same place. Make sure that I've got my source patch moved up, select my source, and period overwrites it in. Now let's take that MTSU drone shot, Effect Controls. We can just click on this number and type in 50% now to shrink it down. Oops, to see it, we need to make sure our playhead is over that clip, and we see that now that shrunk that MTSU drone shot down by 50%. Let's click on the word positioner scale, and we'll drag it into the upper right corner. So now this looks like this.
Where Nashville colleges are
Right, so boom. And now we just need to do the same thing for the other two universities. So I will
Nashville colleges.
bump. So right on that next kick drum, in point, down arrow to go to the end, left arrow once, O for out point. Let's load up a Tennessee State shot. This looks good. Move our source patch up and select it and hit period, which overwrites it into there. This Tennessee State shot, we need to open our effect controls, change this to 50%. That makes it smaller. Click on the word position or scale to get our handles. And let's put that one down here in the corner. Looks great. And now we need one more. We need a video track up here, but I don't have enough video tracks. All we have to do to make a new video track is we can either right click in the track area and choose add tracks, or a trick we learned earlier is if we just select a clip, hold our option key down and option up arrow, option up moves it up to a new track. And so now our Tennessee drone shot made that new track for us. So I can just select this, hold my option key, hit the down arrow, and that moves it back down one track. So we just need to add one more shot, I guess Vanderbilt. And here's the next kick drum. So I'll set my in point, down arrow, left arrow, out point, and move this source patch up one more track. And let's load up a Vanderbilt shot. This one looks good. And the period key overwrites it in. So now we just need to take our Vanderbilt shot, open up our effect controls, scale it to 50%. There it is. Choose the word positioner scale and drag that to the lower right corner. Now we're not going to bother putting in the logos for all these because that would make this twice as tall, but let's see how that looks now.
University, where Nashville colleges are uniting to celebrate.
Nice. So we see that now they all pop in at their own time and they're all scaled down to different corners of the screen. Let's see how that looks.
Belmont University, where Nashville colleges are uniting to celebrate democracy.
And then it all cuts to Tennessee State. That looks great.
Performance from Tennessee.
All right, so we've now made our adjustment layer or our composite of all of the 5 universities. Now it says we need to apply a dissolve in and fade out to the beginning and end of the video. So let's go to the very beginning of the video. I can hit the up arrow a bunch of times until I get to the beginning. And we want to fade this in from black. We already learned how to do that with keyframes right here. So I'm going to hold my command key down and click to add 2 points, let go of my command key, and then I can just drag this down, hold my command key down again, click to add a few points, and then drag that one down. And let's do the same thing with our music. I'll hold my command key down, click to add 2 points, and then I can just drag the audio down here. Now, if you're in the newer version of Premiere, you can also do that for audio with this little box. This creates a little fade that essentially is doing the same thing, just fading the audio up.
Well,
and so you hear it fade up. So either one of those is going to do the same thing. This little box will create a fade in, or this one is doing the exact same thing. So we hear the audio fade up.
well,
So I'm going to go to the very end of my project, hit my backslash key to zoom out, and come over here. And obviously I've not done the last few clips, but let's look at how this ends.
sir, Ryman Hospitality Properties, and event partner, Rock the Vote.
All right.
And now, a few words.
Now we don't need our last line here anymore from Belmont President Bob Fisher. So I'm going to just trim that back. And let's either use our little fade handle if we have that, or hold our command key down to add a few points, let go of the command key, and we can fade that out. And let's do the same thing with the music. I'm going to trim this back, either drag out a little fade right here so that the audio fades away.
Rock the Vote.
And you can hear it fade away, or you can use the points. And I'll do the same thing here for my last 2 video clips. Hold the command key down to click to add a few transparency points, let go of the command key, and now it should all fade away.
And event partner, Rock the Vote.
Nice. Nice little ending here. We've added our fades to the beginning and end of our project. All right. Last thing, it says we need to add an adjustment layer over the entire video and apply a creative look. Last thing, let's go ahead and shrink our tracks. Shift minus is going to shrink these tracks down so we can see some more empty space. And I need another adjustment layer to go over the whole thing. I will just go to my File menu, New Adjustment Layer. Oh, it's not showing me the adjustment layer option. Why not? Because I need to actually be in my project window. So if I go to my project window and click on that, or Shift 1, until I see the project is loaded. Now I'll just make sure that this window is selected. And now when I do a File, New Adjustment Layer, it'll be available because it needs to put the adjustment layer somewhere. So it says it's going to be the same size. No problem. I'll hit OK. And instead of Blur Adjustment Layer, let's change the name and call this Color Adjustment Layer. So now that we have our adjustment layer, I can just drag this over above all of the other clips. And this adjustment layer we're going to use not to add a blur, but I'm going to stretch it over the whole project. And we're going to actually add a look, a social media style look. So just like in Photoshop, using an adjustment layer will affect everything beneath it. But I'm going to select it and open up our window menu, Lumetri Color. And that opens up this little Lumetri Color window somewhere on your screen. Wherever it opens up, you can either click on the 3 hamburgers or the little 3 slashes and choose Undock. And that will bring it out. Or if I wanted it over on the side, I can just click on the name and drag it over. And if I want it here in this same area as the essential graphics, I can just drag it actually right to the center where it turns dark purple. And now you see it will actually combine that. So it doesn't matter where you have that or which window it opens up, because what we want to look at is it'll have a bunch of different categories you can open and close with this little arrow. So I'm going to toggle open the basic correction, or not the basic correction, the creative section. And when I open that up, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of looks here that can change the look. Now, instead of clicking and just like guessing through those, you can actually just hit this little arrow here, and that will go through. Make sure you have your adjustment layer selected. And then as we click through these, you'll see that it applies, or we can see different sort of effects and looks on this. So let me just choose, I'll choose the first one. And you can see that kind of creates this sort of reddish social media look. And I can click through some of these others to see, or maybe try a different one here. Okay, that one's cool. Maybe a different one here. That's a little bright. But again, I'm just going through and trying, let me try this one here. So you get to go through and pick a look. That one's cool. And so once we've got that, you can, with it selected, you can either make it more intense, which you notice if I drag that up, it makes it even more intense. I maybe don't want to go that crazy, but somewhere here around intensity 100 looks pretty good. And of course, if I want to see what it looks like with the adjustment layer off and on, I can click the eyeball, just like in Photoshop. So there's the original with no adjustment layer. And when I turn this eyeball on, now I can see the adjustment layer. So you see that's created this cool social media style filtered look. Very cool. So I've got my adjustment layer, and let's see how that looks from the very beginning.
Welcome to Rock the Vote at Belmont University.
Nice. And at the very end,
Event partner, Rock the Vote.
Very cool. All right, so we've just added an adjustment layer over the entire video to apply that creative look. Now, we've already gone through step 14, which is to use our up and down arrow to zoom in and use our up and down arrow to move to the edges of clips and make sure that they're all ending at the same time. They'll start at different times, but they need to all end when each kind of drone shot ends. They should end at the same time. So when I hit my down arrow, I should see it jumping immediately. If I make sure all my targets are turned on, that it jumps to the edge of a clip. And when it gets to the ends of one of these, I hit the down arrow and it should go to the end. And as soon as I hit the down arrow again, it should jump to this next chunk. If it doesn't, okay, and it did, but if let's say I accidentally had one of these a little too long, when I hit my down arrow, it looks like it goes to the end. But when I hit the down arrow again, I see, oops, it stopped somewhere too close. And that means my clips are not ending at the same time. So I'm going to zoom in and I'll see it, and I can just trim it back until it's the same length. So that's going to make sure all of my shots disappear at the same time.
With performers from Tennessee State University, spoken word artist Summer Jade, from Middle Tennessee State University, Shelter Cove.
So all of those things are going through beautifully.
From Fisk University, R&B singer-songwriter Lauren McClinton, from Vanderbilt University, a cappella group The Melodors, and student performer.
All right, so all of that's looking good. All right, so the last step is we need to export this final media file to Frame.io, and we're going to give it a name. We'll cover this in class, but for now, we're going to click on the window menu, and I'm going to go down to Review with Frame.io. Window, Review with Frame.io, and that should bring us up a box that asks us to continue with our Adobe ID. We use the same ID we used to log into Adobe. I'll click Continue. If we get a problem, we can work on this in class together to finish this project up. But if you've gone through and you've done these steps before next class, then that's going to put us in a great place to finish this project up together and begin preparing for our practical exam. Pause this video as much as you need, go through and follow along, pause and switch back and forth so you can watch a step, take note of the keyboard shortcuts, and then you can do it. So if you will go ahead, and I'm going to quickly window workspaces, make sure I'm in editing, and then I'll reset it to the saved layout. So that's going to hide all of the extra windows. And we should be able to look and see that your project should look something like this when you're zoomed out. So just to verify that, I'll hit my backslash key to zoom out. So if I'm zoomed out too far or zoomed in too far, the backslash key right under delete will zoom me out. And you should have a project that looks very similar to this, with our artists and logos, with our drone shots and their logos, and with our music all playing with our voiceover. So let's do one quick playthrough so you can see my version. Yours can be a little different if you have changed the text or maybe moved it to some different places. If I select this text and switch my V key, I could maybe move that over to the side and then select the artist photo and use the effect controls to move her over to the side, for example. So that could create an interesting sort of look. Let me select my text again. And so maybe we want them side by side.
Tennessee State University, spoken word artist Summer Jade. From Middle Tennessee State University, Shelter Cove.
That looks pretty cool.
From Fisk University, R&B singer.
I don't like the way this is laid out over the top, so maybe I'll select the text and select position or scale. Maybe just select the text and then click on it and move it over to the left. And let's select her picture. And if I need these a little taller, I'll hit Shift plus, select her picture, select position or scale. Let's move her over to the right. There we go. That's looking cool. And we can do the same. The Melodors actually looks okay, but maybe let's select their picture, select position or scale, and move them up just a little bit. And Annie DeRusso, same. Let's pick her picture, select position or scale, and move her up just a little bit. And of course, there's a few more artists here, Bren Joy and Moon Taxi, and another Rock the Vote logo that you need to have done. So I don't have those on here, but just for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and just remind you to put in the Bren Joy
and Belmont alumni performance.
In fact, I could just do it really quick. I'll just zoom in.
From special guest Bren.
And I'm going to start Bren Joy, set my endpoint.
Bren Joy and headliners Moon Taxi.
Maybe I'll put them both in at the same time. So let me go to my graphics, find my artist. There's Bren Joy. I'm going to right click and clear his in and out points so that it goes as long as I need. I'll put him on the same track here as our artist. So period, puts Bren Joy in there. And I'll need to resize him, but let's put Moon Taxi on at the same time. So I hit my up arrow to go to the beginning, I to set an endpoint, down, left, O to set my out point. So that's the same place. And let's find Moon Taxi. There's Moon Taxi. Right click, clear any in and out points if they're there. And I want to make sure that this is going on a different track. So I'll put them on the track up here and period. That puts them in. And now let's go and resize them both. So I will select my effect controls, position or scale, and let's shrink them down a bit and put Moon Taxi over on the side. And we could have them appear one right after the other. So Bren Joy could appear first and then Moon Taxi could appear second. Or I could just put them both here on screen at the same time. Okay, this is getting better. So there's Bren Joy and Moon Taxi. And then we're going to need an adjustment layer to blur the background. So I'll hold my Option key down and drag that adjustment layer over here and trim that. And then we don't want to forget to add our fade ins and outs. Oops, looks like I forgot to do them here on Annie. So I'll Command click to add that keyframes. And that's adding in some blur animations so that the blur and Annie all fade up. And I'll do the same here to Moon Taxi. Command clicking twice, once towards the middle and then once towards the beginning. And then dragging that so that these clips start and fade in together.
Bren Joy and headliner.
Nice. Now they need titles. They need text titles, obviously. So why don't I just copy the same way? I'll hold my Option key down, click and drag Annie DeRusso up here. And with my Option key held down, that made a copy of Annie. And oops, looks like I'm going to need one more extra space. So I need to move this adjustment layer up one more track. So in order to fit Annie's text in here, so I'll select my adjustment layer, hold my Option key and Option up arrow. And that'll let me put in one more text block right here. Hold my Option key and drag. And now I've got two that I can change to Bryn Joy and Moon Taxi. So I'll hit my tilde key to bring it back down. And let's go to this one and select it. And let's go ahead and change this. So I'll double click on it. It brings up all of my text. There's Annie DeRusso. I'll change this one to Bryn Joy. And double click to load this one in and change that one to Moon Taxi. And then I need to move them underneath the correct person. So I'll switch back to my V tool, my selection tool. And Bryn Joy needs to move over here. And I'll select the next one, Moon Taxi. Just make sure I've got my V tool selected. And I can move Moon Taxi right here. Let's see how that looks.
Best Bryn Joy and headliners Moon Taxi. With a special...
Oops, that looks good, except they didn't quite end at the same place. Let's zoom in and see. Actually, it looks like maybe they did. Okay, good. They just dropped off and changed there as we switched to drone shots. Great. I believe there was just one more Rock the Vote logo.
With a special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Ryman Hospitality Properties, and event partner, Rock the Vote.
All right, so we need Ryman Hospitality Properties and Rock the Vote. So those are going to be under my logos. So let me find Ryman. There it is. Let's right-click, clear the in and outs. And let's put their in and out points here.
Ryman Hospitality.
Okay, so right before she says Ryman Hospitality Properties, I see a little gap. So I'll set an in point.
Ryman Hospitality Properties.
Set an out point. And let's drop in the Ryman Hospitality Properties. Period, puts it in. Okay, it needs resized. Go to our effect controls and scale it down. And then we need Rock the Vote right afterwards. I'll go to the end of this clip, set an in point.
And event partner, Rock the Vote.
Set an out point. And let's go use the other Rock the Vote logo. So I don't think we've used this one yet. I'll right click, clear the in and outs, and period to drop it in. And that's already looks like a good size. Now we'll need a adjustment layer underneath them. So we can put these on whatever level we want. Remember, we can select them and Option down arrow to move them up or down, but it doesn't really matter. And I'll hold my Option key and drag my adjustment layer here so I can make a copy. And I'll just drag this out to the end. And we want them all to fade out at the same time. So let's make sure that they're the same length. And I'll hold my Command key to add some points to fade out the ends of these clips so that they will transition and fade out. So now they'll fade out together. Let's see how that looks. Oops, probably should add one here at the beginning of the Ryman Hospitality Properties. Might need to zoom in a little bit to make it easier to click these keyframes with my Command key. And here we go.
Sponsor, Ryman Hospitality Properties, and event partner, Rock the Vote.
Nice. All right. So if you get to that point, you're going to be in great shape and we'll be able to check all of these in class and make sure that you are good to go. If you've not yet done this, walk through all of these steps, watch this video carefully, pause it as often as you need, and so that you can make all of these changes and have a video that you're proud of, and you'll be able to apply these skills to all of the projects coming up through the rest of class. Great job, and we'll walk through turning this in class next time. Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you in class.